What if I told you that my own parents sold my car on my graduation day and told me to be grateful? What if I told you they'd been hiding $75,000 from me while I ate ramen for dinner? And what if I told you that when I finally fought back, I discovered family secrets that changed everything? This is the story of how one text message exposed years of lies and led me to a hidden fortune I never knew existed. The moment I put on my cap and gown that morning, I thought it would be the best day of my life. 4 years of college sleepless nights, working double shifts at the coffee shop just to make ends meet. I was finally graduating. Finally, proving to my family that I could make something of myself. But then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom, and I swear those 14 words changed everything. Sold your car. Your sister needs it now. Be grateful we pay your loan. I read it 3 times. Then 4. Then I just stood there in my graduation gown, watching my classmates celebrate with their families, while my world completely fell apart. I never expected this on my graduation day, but that text, it tore my world apart in ways I'm still trying to understand. And if you've ever felt like you were invisible in your own family, or if you've ever been overshadowed by a sibling who could do no wrong, then you need to hear this story. Because what happened next, it changed everything. Drop a comment if you've ever been in a situation like this. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around to see how I fought back. Let me take you back to the beginning, because this didn't start with a text message. This started years ago when I was just a kid trying to figure out why nothing I did was ever good enough. My name is Sarah Evans. I'm 22 years old and I've been working since I was 16. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. While my friends were hanging out at the mall or going to parties, I was pulling double shifts at the local coffee shop, saving every penny I could. You see, my family has this thing about money. My parents, they'll tell you, they treat all their kids equally. But the truth is something completely different, and it took me way too long to see it. I have a younger brother, Tyler. He's 19 now, and let me tell you something about Tyler. That kid has never worked a day in his life. Never had to worry about rent, never had to choose between buying textbooks or eating lunch. Everything just gets handed to him on a silver platter. New iPhone comes out. Tyler gets it. Needs a laptop for school. Dad's already ordered the most expensive one. Wants to go on a spring break trip with his friends. Mom's already transferred the money to his account. But me, I had to beg for months just to get them to co-sign my student loans. And even then, they made it clear I was on my own. I remember when I bought my car. It was a used Honda Civic, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I saved for 8 months working every weekend, picking up extra shifts whenever I could. The day I finally had enough for the down payment, I was so proud. I called my parents, expecting them to be happy for me. You know what my mom said? Well, I hope you can afford the insurance. That was it. No congratulations, no acknowledgement of how hard I'd worked. Just worry about whether I could handle the responsibility. But when Tyler crashed his car into a mailbox because he was texting and driving, they had him in a brand new SUV within a week. And somehow, that was just boys being boys. I should have seen the pattern then. I should have realized that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked or how much I achieved, it would never be enough. Because I wasn't Tyler. Let me tell you about my high school prom. I worked extra shifts for 3 months to save up for my dress. Found this beautiful blue dress on sale, bought my own shoes, even paid for my own hair appointment. I was so excited to show my parents. The night of prom, I'm getting ready, taking pictures, feeling like maybe this was my moment to shine. And then Tyler walks in. He wants to go to some party with his friends, but he doesn't have a ride. Guess who suddenly needed to drive him instead of going to prom? My mom looked at me like I was being selfish for even hesitating. Sarah, you're being dramatic. It's just a dance. Tyler's friends are counting on him. I went to prom 3 hours late after driving Tyler all over town. By the time I got there, the dance was almost over. I spent maybe 20 minutes there before having to leave to pick Tyler up. But here's the thing that really gets me. The next day, Tyler posted pictures from his party on social media. He was laughing, having the time of his life surrounded by friends. And not once did he thank me for what I'd given up. That's when I realized something. In my family, my dreams, my goals, my achievements, they were all just obstacles to Tyler's happiness. When I got accepted to college, I was over the moon. I called my parents immediately, practically screaming with excitement. I'd gotten into my dream school and I'd even managed to get a partial scholarship. You know what happened? I'm literally mid-sentence telling them about my acceptance when my dad interrupts me. "That's great, honey. Oh, by the way, Tyler just won the MVP award for his basketball team. We're so proud of him." And just like that, my moment was gone. The conversation shifted entirely to Tyler's basketball award. An award, by the way, that he got for showing up to practice half the time. But my college acceptance, my scholarship, that was just background noise. All my achievements were invisible. But Tyler's mistakes, they always got a response. They always got attention. They always got fixed. I should have realized then that this was never going to change. That no matter what I did, no matter how successful I became, I would always be the responsible one. The one who didn't need help. The one who could handle everything on her own. Because that's what happens when you're the strong one in the family. People start to think you don't need anything. They start to think you don't have feelings. They start to think you're just there to make everyone else's life easier. And for the longest time, I believed them. But let me paint you the full picture of what my life really looked like during college. Because this graduation day text didn't come out of nowhere. This was years in the making. While Tyler was sleeping in until noon every day during his senior year of high school, I was getting up at 5 a.m. to open the coffee shop before my 8 a.m. classes. While he was getting his allowance deposited into his account every month, I was counting quarters to see if I could afford ramen for dinner. And the crazy thing, my parents acted like this was normal. Like somehow I had chosen this life of struggle, while Tyler had just gotten lucky. I remember one particular morning, I was exhausted from pulling a double shift the night before. I had 3 exams that week and I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in days. I came home to grab my textbooks and there's Tyler sprawled on the couch playing video games on his brand new PlayStation that Dad had bought him, quote unquote, for good grades. His good grades C's and B's. Meanwhile, I'm pulling a 3.8 GPA while working 30 hours a week and nobody even asks about my report card. But it gets worse, so much worse. Tyler decides he wants the latest iPhone that just came out. It's like $800. Does he have to save for it? Does he have to work extra hours? Of course not. He just mentions it at dinner, and by the weekend there, it is wrapped up with a bow. That same week, my laptop died, completely fried, and I needed it for school, for my online classes, for everything. You know what my parents told me? "Well, Sarah, you're so good with money, we know you'll figure it out." I ended up using the library computers for 2 months until I could save enough to buy a refurbished laptop that was older than my little brother. But here's what really opened my eyes to how messed up this whole dynamic was. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the complete and total lack of acknowledgement for anything I did. When Tyler barely graduated high school, they threw him a party. When I made the dean's list 3 semesters in a row, they forgot to even congratulate me. When Tyler got his first job working maybe 15 hours a week at a sporting goods store, they acted like he'd cured cancer. My dad literally called his friends to brag about Tyler's work ethic. But me working 30 to 40 hours a week while maintaining honors grades. That was just expected. That was just Sarah being Sarah. And the car. Oh man, the car situation still makes my blood boil when I think about it. I saved for 8 months to buy that Honda Civic. 8 months of eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch. 8 months of saying no to every social event that cost money. 8 months of working until my feet ached just so I could have reliable transportation. The day I bought it, I was so proud. I called my parents from the dealership expecting them to be excited for me. You know what my mom said? "Well, I hope you got gap insurance, and make sure you keep up with the oil changes. Cars are expensive, Sarah. Not congratulations, not, we're proud of you. Just worry about whether I could handle the responsibility." But 6 months later, Tyler crashes his car. Not just a little fender bender, mind you. He totaled it. Completely destroyed it because he was texting while driving, ran a red light, and T-boned someone. Was he in trouble? Did he have to face any consequences? Of course not. Within a week, they had him in a brand new SUV. Not used. Brand new. And they increased his insurance premium, which they were already paying, like it was no big deal. I asked my mom about it. I said, Mom, how come Tyler gets a new car when he's the one who crashed it? But when I needed help buying mine, you told me I was on my own. You know what she said? Tyler's just a kid, Sarah. He made a mistake. You're more mature. You can handle these things. More mature. That's what they always said. I was more mature, so I didn't need help. I was more responsible, so I didn't deserve recognition. I was stronger, so I could handle being ignored. And the worst part, I started to believe it. I started to think that maybe this was just how families worked. Maybe some kids get support and others just have to figure it out on their own. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Deep down, I knew that this wasn't about maturity or responsibility. This was about favoritism, plain and simple. Every achievement I had was invisible to them, but every single mistake Tyler made that got attention, that got fixed, that got handled with love and understanding. When I got my first promotion at the coffee shop to shift supervisor crickets. When Tyler got benched from the basketball team for skipping practice, my parents were on the phone with the coach within an hour trying to get him reinstated. When I made the dean's list again, they said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to watching TV. When Tyler failed his driving test the first time, they hired him a private instructor and bought him extra lessons. The pattern was so clear, but I kept thinking if I just worked harder, if I just achieved more, maybe they'd finally see me. Maybe they'd finally be proud. But that graduation text, that was the moment I realized the truth. It didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter how successful I became or how responsible I was. In their eyes, I would always be the one who didn't need anything. And Tyler would always be the one who deserved everything. So there I was, walking across that stage. 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears, all leading up to this moment. The dean called my name. I shook his hand, and for just a second, I felt like I had finally made it. I looked out into the crowd, searching for my parents' faces. I knew they were there somewhere. They had to be proud, right? This was their daughter graduating college. This was everything they said they wanted for me. The ceremony ended, and I was riding this incredible high. All around me, families were taking pictures, hugging, crying, happy tears. I felt this overwhelming sense of accomplishment washing over me. I had done it. Despite everything, despite having to work twice as hard as everyone else, I had actually done it. I pulled out my phone to call my parents, to find them in the crowd, to finally have that moment where they would tell me they were proud of me. That's when I saw the text. My phone had been on silent during the ceremony, so I hadn't heard it come in, but there it was sitting at the top of my notifications. A message from Mom. I opened it expecting maybe congratulations or directions on where to meet them. Instead, I read 14 words that felt like a punch to the gut. Sold your car. Your sister needs it now. Be grateful we pay your loan. I stared at the screen. I read it again. And again. I thought maybe I was misunderstanding something. Maybe this was some kind of joke. Maybe she meant a different car. But no, she meant my car. The Honda Civic that I had saved 8 months to buy. The car that was in my name that I had been making payments on for 2 years. The car that represented everything I had worked for. They had sold it. Without asking me, without even telling me until it was already done. And the worst part, that last line. Be grateful we pay your loan. My student loan. The loan they co-signed because I begged them to the loan that I had been making payments on myself for the past year. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I felt like the ground was shifting underneath me. All around me, people were celebrating, laughing, taking photos, and I was standing there in my cap and gown feeling like my world was collapsing. I tried calling my mom. It went straight to voicemail. I tried my dad. Same thing. I tried Tyler thinking maybe he could explain what was happening. Voicemail again. They were all here somewhere in this crowd of thousands of people, and they were ignoring my calls. I stood there for what felt like hours, just holding my phone, trying to process what had just happened. This was supposed to be the best day of my life. This was supposed to be my moment. And they had taken that away from me with 14 words in a text message. But you know what really sent me over the edge? It wasn't just the car. It was the memory that came flooding back of Tyler's accident. Remember when I told you Tyler totaled his car texting and driving? Well, let me tell you exactly how that played out, because the contrast is just mind-blowing. It was a Tuesday night around 10 p.m. I was at home studying for midterms when I heard my parents' phone ringing. Then I heard my mom scream. Tyler had been in an accident. We rushed to the hospital and thankfully Tyler was okay. Shaken up, but okay. The other driver was fine too. But Tyler's car completely destroyed. Absolutely totaled. You know what my parents' first concern was? Not that Tyler had been texting and driving. Not that he could have killed someone. Not that he needed to learn from this mistake. Their first concern was making sure Tyler had transportation. By Thursday, 2 days later, they were at the dealership, not looking at used cars, not looking at something reasonable and affordable. They were buying him a brand new SUV, a vehicle that cost more than twice what my Honda Civic was worth. And when the insurance and payout wasn't enough to cover the full cost, did they make Tyler get a job to help pay for it? Did they make him work extra hours or take on any responsibility for his mistake? Of course not. They just wrote a check for the difference. Like it was nothing. I remember asking my dad about it. I said, "Dad, don't you think Tyler should have some consequences for what happened? Don't you think he should help pay for the new car since he's the one who destroyed the old one?" You know what he said? "Sarah, accidents happen. Tyler feels bad enough already. We don't need to punish him for a mistake." A mistake. That's what they called it. Tyler texting and driving, running a red light, and totaling his car was just a mistake. But me needing help to buy my first car, that was asking too much. And now, standing there on my graduation day, they had taken my car. The car I had worked for. The car I had saved for. The car that was legally mine. And they had given it to my sister. Wait, I should clarify something. When the text said, "Your sister," my mom wasn't talking about another daughter. She was talking about Tyler's girlfriend, Ashley, who my mom had always treated like the daughter she never had. Ashley, who called my parents mom and dad. Ashley, who got invited to family dinners and vacations and holidays. Ashley, who apparently needed my car more than I did. So let me get this straight. Tyler destroys his car through his own recklessness, and he gets rewarded with something better. But I work my ass off to buy my own car, and it gets taken away to help his girlfriend. Standing there in my graduation gown, surrounded by families celebrating their children's achievements, I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. They stole what I built with my own hands, and I was supposed to just move on. I was supposed to be grateful. I was supposed to thank them for co-signing a loan that I was already paying back myself. The worst part wasn't even losing the car. The worst part was realizing that this was how they saw me. I wasn't their daughter whose achievements deserved to be celebrated. I was just a resource to be used when they needed to solve Tyler's problems. And that text on my graduation day was them making it crystal clear that no matter what I accomplished, no matter how hard I worked, no matter how successful I became, I would always come second to Tyler and his needs. But you know what? Sometimes the worst moments in your life become the moments that change everything. And as I stood there crying in my cap and gown while families celebrated all around me, I made a decision. I was done being the family's backup plan. I was done being taken for granted. And I was done letting them steal my joy. What happened next? Well, that's when things got really interesting. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions like I was on autopilot. I showed up to my shifts at the coffee shop, made lattes, took orders, smiled at customers, but inside I felt completely numb. I kept expecting my parents to call, to explain, to apologize, to tell me this was all some horrible misunderstanding. But my phone stayed silent. It was Tuesday morning, 3 days after graduation, when everything started to change. I was working the opening shift mechanically going through my routine when Mike walked in. Mike was this guy I'd been working with for about a year. He was older than me, maybe 25, and he had this way of reading people that was almost scary. He took one look at me that morning and knew something was seriously wrong. "Sarah," he said, leaning against the counter, "what happened? And don't tell me you're fine because you look like someone just ran over your dog." I tried to brush him off at first. Mike and I were work friends, but I'd never really opened up to him about my family situation. I mean, how do you explain to someone that your parents sold your car without asking and gave it to your brother's girlfriend? But Mike just kept pushing. And finally, standing there in an empty coffee shop at 6 a.m., I broke down and told him everything. I told him about the text, about Tyler always getting everything handed to him, about years of feeling invisible in my own family, about working my ass off just to have everything I'd earned taken away from me. Mike listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "Sarah, you know that's theft, right? They can't just sell your car. It's in your name. You've been making the payments. That's literally stealing from you." I hadn't even thought about it that way. I'd been so caught up in the emotional betrayal that I hadn't considered the legal aspect. But Mike was right. The car was mine, legally, completely mine. "Look," Mike said, "I know we're not super close, but I can see you're in a bad situation. My roommate just moved out, and I've got a couch you can crash on if you need somewhere to stay while you figure this out." I almost started crying right there. Here was this guy I barely knew outside of work offering me more support than my own family had ever given me. That night, I made a phone call I probably should have made years ago. I called my Aunt Linda. Aunt Linda is my dad's older sister, and she's always been the black sheep of the family. She never got married, never had kids, built her own successful business from the ground up. My parents always talked about her like she was some kind of cautionary tale, but I'd always secretly admired her independence. "Sarah," she said when she picked up, "congratulations on graduating. I'm so proud of you, honey." Those words hit me harder than I expected. When was the last time someone in my family had said they were proud of me? I told Aunt Linda everything. About the car, about Tyler, about years of being treated like I didn't matter. And what she told me next absolutely floored me. "Sarah," she said, "I've been watching this happen for years, and it's been breaking my heart. Your parents have always favored Tyler, and I've called them out on it more times than I can count. That's part of why I'm not invited to family gatherings anymore." She paused, and I could hear her taking a deep breath. "Honey, I need to tell you something. I've been keeping track of how much money your parents have spent on Tyler versus you. It's not even close. In the last 4 years alone, they've spent over $30,000 on Tyler. Car's electronics bail money when he got arrested for underage drinking lawyer fees for that accident. And they've spent maybe $3,000 on you, and most of that was stuff they were legally obligated to help with. $30,000 on Tyler while I was eating ramen for dinner and working double shifts just to survive." But Aunt Linda wasn't done. "I want you to know that I see how hard you've worked. I see how much you've accomplished with zero support from them. And I want to help you fight this." That conversation gave me something I'd been missing for years: validation. Someone in my family finally saw what was happening and was willing to call it what it was. That night, I started putting together a plan. First, I gathered every document I could find related to my car. The title, which was in my name only, every payment I'd made, every insurance payment, every receipt from oil changes and maintenance. I had been meticulous about keeping records, and now I was grateful for that habit. I found my bank statement showing the automatic payments I'd been making on the car loan. I found the original loan documents with my signature. I even found receipts from the down payment I'd made with cash I'd saved from work. Then I started digging deeper. I pulled my student loan statements showing that I had been making payments on those too, despite what my parents claimed about them, paying my loan. I found records of every tuition payment I'd made myself, every textbook I'd bought, every school expense I'd covered. I also started documenting the pattern of favoritism. I made a list of every major purchase my parents had made for Tyler in the past 4 years, with approximate values. The cars, the electronics, the bail money, the legal fees. I even found old text messages where they'd asked me to send money to Tyler for various emergencies. It was 3 a.m. when I finished putting together what I started calling my dossier. It was 47 pages of documentation, proving not only that my car had been stolen, but that my parents had been financially discriminating against me for years. I printed 3 copies. One for me, one for Aunt Linda, and one for my parents. Then I started packing. I didn't take much. Some clothes, my laptop, my important documents, a few sentimental items. I left behind most of the furniture I'd bought for my room, most of my decorations, most of my books. I wanted to travel light. But before I left, I had one more thing to do. I placed that dossier on the kitchen table right where my parents would see it when they came down for breakfast. 47 pages of evidence organized and documented showing exactly what they had done and exactly what it had cost me. On top of the dossier, I left a note. It was short and to the point. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. The documents below show that you've stolen my car and that you've been financially discriminating against me for years. I've made copies and shared them with people who can help me get my property back. Don't try to contact me until you're ready to return what you've stolen and have a serious conversation about how you've treated me. Sarah. I left the house at 4 a.m. carrying 2 suitcases and a backpack. I walked 3 miles to Mike's apartment since I no longer had a car to drive. As I walked through the empty streets, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't happiness exactly, but it was something close to freedom. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself over my family's dysfunction. I was choosing to fight back instead of just accepting whatever they decided I deserved. And that feeling of finally standing up for myself, it was terrifying and exhilarating and completely life-changing all at the same time. But I had no idea what I had just set in motion, because when my parents found that dossier the next morning, everything was about to explode in ways I never could have imagined. I was asleep on Mike's couch when my phone started ringing at 7:30 the next morning. It was my mom calling over and over again. I let it go to voicemail, then Tyler started calling, then my dad, then my mom again. By 8 a.m., I had 17 missed calls and 12 text messages. The text messages were wild. They ranged from, "Sarah, we need to talk," to, "How could you just leave like this?" to, "This is ridiculous, come home right now." But it was Tyler's text that really got to me. He wrote, "Sarah, Mom is freaking out. Dad's locked himself in his office." What did you do? What did I do? I documented years of theft and favoritism. That's what I did. Mike woke up around 8:30 and saw me staring at my phone. "Let me guess," he said. "They found your little care package." I nodded. 17 missed calls and counting. "Good," Mike said. "Let them panic. Maybe now they'll understand what it feels like to have something important taken away from them." At 9 a.m., my phone rang again, but this time it was Aunt Linda. "Sarah," she said, "I just got a very interesting phone call from your mother. She says you've lost your mind and are making up lies about the family. She wants me to talk sense into you." I felt my heart sink. Even Aunt Linda was turning against me. "But here's the thing," Aunt Linda continued. "I told her I'd be happy to come over and talk, because it's time your parents and I had a long overdue conversation about how they've been treating you." Relief flooded through me. Aunt Linda wasn't backing down. She was going to fight for me. "I'm heading over there now," she said. "And Sarah, I'm bringing some documents of my own. There are things about your family's finances that your parents have been hiding from you. Things you have a right to know." 2 hours later, Aunt Linda called me back. Her voice was shaking with anger. Sarah, you need to come to the house. Now. Bring Mike if you want backup. We're having a family meeting, and there are some truths that need to come out. Mike drove me to my parents' house. I hadn't been back since I'd left my dossier on the kitchen table, and I was terrified. But I was also ready. I was done being afraid of my own family. When we walked in, the atmosphere was electric with tension. My mom was pacing around the living room like a caged animal. My dad was sitting in his chair looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Tyler was on the couch holding my dossier and looking absolutely shell-shocked. Aunt Linda was sitting at the dining room table with a briefcase open in front of her, looking like she was ready for war. Sarah, my mom said the moment I walked in, "How could you do this to us? How could you make us look like monsters? We've given you everything." "Everything," I said. "Mom, you sold my car, the car I bought with my own money. You sold it without asking me and gave it to Ashley." "We needed to help Tyler," my dad said from his chair. "Ashley needed reliable transportation for her job. You're living here rent-free. You can walk to work." "I'm not living here anymore," I said. "And Tyler has a brand new SUV. Why couldn't Ashley use that?" Tyler looked up from the dossier. "Because I need it for work," he mumbled. "You work 15 hours a week at a sporting goods store," I said. "I work 40 hours a week and go to school full-time. But somehow I'm the one who doesn't need a car." "You're being dramatic," my mom said. "It's just temporary until Ashley can save up for her own car." That's when Aunt Linda stood up. "Actually," she said, "let's talk about what's really dramatic here. Sarah, did you know that in the 4 years since you started college, your parents have spent over $37,000 on Tyler?" The room went dead silent. "37,000, Aunt Linda repeated. "I have the receipts. Cars, electronics, bail, money, legal fees, credit card payments, rent payments when Tyler moved out and couldn't afford his apartment. $37,000. She pulled out a stack of papers from her briefcase. "And how much have they spent on you, Sarah? $3,200. Total. And most of that was for things they were legally obligated to help with as co-signers." My mom's face was turning red. "Linda, that's none of your business. How we spend our money is between us and our children." "Actually," Aunt Linda said, "it becomes my business when you're stealing from one child to subsidize the other. Sarah's car was in her name. She made the payments. What you did was theft." "It was for the family," my dad said, standing up. "Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for each other." "Sacrifices," Aunt Linda laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "When has Tyler ever made a sacrifice for Sarah? When has Tyler ever given up anything to help his sister?" Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear into the couch. He kept opening his mouth like he wanted to say something, but no words came out. That's when Mike spoke up for the first time. "I brought something you might want to see," he said, pulling out his phone. "Sarah asked me to take some photos yesterday when we went to see where her car ended up." He showed us pictures on his phone. My Honda Civic sitting in Ashley's driveway, but it looked different. The bumper had been repainted. There were new rims on it. The interior had been completely redone. "Ashley's been modifying Sarah's car," Mike said. "New paint job, new rims, new stereo system, custom seat covers. She's probably put another $3,000 into it." My mom looked at the photos and her face went white. "We didn't know she was going to do that," she said quietly. "It doesn't matter," I said. "It's my car. She had no right to change anything about it." That's when Aunt Linda dropped the biggest bombshell of all. "Actually," she said, "while we're talking about things that belong to Sarah, there's something else your parents have been hiding from you." She pulled out a thick folder from her briefcase. "Sarah, did you know that my father, your grandfather, set up trust funds for both you and Tyler when you were born?" I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "What? Equal trust funds?" Aunt Linda continued. $50,000 each to be used for college expenses and to help you get started in life. I looked at my parents. My dad was staring at the floor. My mom looked like she was about to be sick. Tyler's trust fund has been completely depleted, Aunt Linda said. Your parents have been using it to pay for everything. His cars, his legal fees, his rent, his credit card debt. It's all gone. Tyler looked up sharply. What I have a trust fund, had, Aunt Linda corrected. You had a trust fund, but your parents spent every penny of it on you without telling you about it. But Sarah's trust fund, she continued, they've been hiding from her. It's still intact. All $50,000 plus 20 years of interest. Sarah, you have almost $75,000 that legally belongs to you. The room erupted. My mom started shouting about how they were just trying to protect us from making bad financial decisions. My dad was yelling about how Aunt Linda had no right to interfere with their family. Tyler was demanding to know why no one had told him about the trust fund, but I just sat there in shock. $75,000. Money that could have paid for my entire college education. Money that could have bought me a reliable car and a security deposit on an apartment and given me the freedom to make my own choices. Money that my parents had hidden from me while I worked 40 hours a week and ate ramen for dinner and stressed about paying for textbooks. You stole from me, I said quietly, but somehow my voice cut through all the shouting. You didn't just sell my car. You've been stealing from me my entire life. We were protecting you, my mom said. You're too young to handle that kind of money responsibly. Too young, I said, standing up. I'm 22 years old. I've been supporting myself since I was 16. But Tyler, who crashes cars and gets arrested and can't hold a job for more than 3 months, he was responsible enough to have his trust fund spent on him. That's when Tyler finally spoke up. I didn't know, he said, and his voice was shaking. Sarah, I swear I didn't know about the trust funds. I didn't know they were spending more money on me than on you. I thought we were both getting the same help. For the first time in years, Tyler looked like he was actually seeing me. Really seeing me. All those times, you asked me to be grateful, he continued. All those times you said I was lucky to have parents who supported me. I thought you were just being bitter. I didn't realize they weren't supporting you at all. Aunt Linda pulled out her phone. I'm calling the family attorney, she said. This has gone on long enough. Sarah needs access to her trust fund, and we need to figure out how to get her car back. And, she added, dialing the number, I'm calling the police. What they did with Sarah's car is theft, plain and simple. My parents looked panicked. Linda, please, my mom said. We can work this out as a family. We don't need to involve lawyers and police. You should have thought about that before you stole from your daughter, Aunt Linda said coldly. As she was talking to the attorney, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Mike had posted the photos of my modified car on social media, along with the story of what had happened. People were sharing it, commenting, expressing outrage on my behalf. Within an hour, 2 police officers showed up at the door. Aunt Linda had filed a theft report on my behalf. My parents were forced to explain to the officers why they had sold a car that wasn't theirs to sell. They tried to claim it was a family matter, but the officers weren't buying it. The car is registered in Sarah's name, one of the officers said. She's been making the payments. You can't just sell someone else's property, even if they're your child. By the end of that day, everything had changed. The attorney was working on getting me access to my trust fund. The police had recovered my car, though Ashley had to remove all the modifications she'd made, and my parents were facing the reality that their years of favoritism and financial abuse had finally caught up with them. But the biggest change was in Tyler. For the first time in our lives, he was looking at our family dynamic with clear eyes, and what he saw was making him sick. Sarah, he said as the police were leaving, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever gotten from anyone in my family, and somehow that meant everything. 1 week later, I was still living on Mike's couch, but everything felt different. For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about money. I wasn't stressed about how I was going to pay for things. I wasn't wondering if I was asking for too much. Because for the first time in my life, I had people in my corner who actually cared about my well-being. The trust fund hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Aunt Linda had hired one of the best family attorneys in the state, and she was paying for everything. She told me it was the least she could do after watching my parents treat me like garbage for years. I should have intervened sooner, she said during one of our phone calls. I should have fought harder for you, but I promise you, Sarah, this ends now. The hearing was surreal. Sitting in that courtroom listening to the attorney explain how my parents had hidden $75,000 from me while I struggled to pay for basic necessities, I felt like I was hearing about someone else's life. The judge was not happy with my parents. Not happy at all. She ordered them to give me immediate access to my trust fund with interest. She also ordered them to repay me for the car payments I'd made on the Honda since they had sold it without my permission. And here's the part that really shocked me. She ordered them to attend financial counseling sessions to address what she called a pattern of financial abuse. Financial abuse. I'd never heard that term before, but hearing it in an official courtroom applied to my situation was incredibly validating. What my parents had done to me had a name. It was a real thing that happened to people, and it wasn't okay. My parents tried to argue that they were just trying to protect me, that they were planning to give me the money when I was older, but the judge shut that down pretty quickly. The trust was established when she was born, the judge said. She's now 22 years old, college educated, and has been financially independent for years. There is no reasonable justification for continuing to hide these assets from her. Walking out of that courtroom with legal access to $75,000 felt like stepping into a completely different life. But you know what felt even better? Having people who believed me. Having people who fought for me. Having people who saw my worth. That afternoon, I opened my own bank account at a different bank from my parents. I transferred the trust fund money into my name only. And for the first time since graduation day, I felt like I could breathe. But the money, as amazing as it was, wasn't even the best part of what happened next. Tyler called me the day after the hearing. He asked if he could come see me if we could talk. I was hesitant at first, but something in his voice told me this was different. He showed up at Mike's apartment with a notebook in his hands and tears in his eyes. Sarah, he said, I've been doing a lot of thinking this week, and I made a list of every time I can remember taking something from you or getting something you should have gotten. I want to make this right. He opened the notebook and I saw pages and pages of his handwriting, dates, events, dollar amounts. He had documented everything he could remember. I know I can't give you back your prom night, he said. I can't give you back all those times Mom and Dad ignored your achievements to focus on me, but I can start paying you back for the money. He pulled out his phone and showed me his bank account. I've been working extra shifts every day since the hearing. I'm going to pay you back everything I can calculate that you lost because of me. I stared at him. This was not the Tyler I knew. The Tyler I knew didn't take responsibility for anything. You don't have to do that, I said. Yes, I do, Tyler said. Sarah, I'm 19 years old and I've never paid for anything in my life. I've never had to struggle or worry, or choose between things I needed. And I never realized that the reason I got to live like that was because you were being denied those same opportunities. He handed me an envelope. This is $500. It's not nearly enough, but it's what I've saved so far. And I'm going to keep working until I've paid back every penny I can. That's when I started crying. Not because of the money, but because my little brother was finally seeing me as a person. For the first time in our lives, he was acknowledging that his actions had consequences for other people. Tyler, I said, the money isn't the point. The point is that you see what happened. The point is that you're willing to change. I want to change, he said. I want to be better. I want to be the kind of brother you deserve. Over the next few weeks, Tyler proved that he meant what he said. He picked up extra shifts at work. He started paying for his own gas, his own food, his own entertainment. He even moved back in with my parents and started paying them rent. But most importantly, he started standing up to them when they made comments about me. I heard about this from Aunt Linda, who was still in regular contact with my parents. Apparently, Tyler had become my defender in the family. When my mom complained about how I had embarrassed the family by involving lawyers and police, Tyler shut her down. Sarah didn't embarrass us, he told her. We embarrassed ourselves by treating her like crap for years. Meanwhile, I was building a completely new life for myself. With my trust fund money, I was able to pay off my student loans entirely. I put a down payment on a reliable used car, a Toyota Camry that was only 3 years old. I found my own apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I also started freelancing as a marketing consultant using the skills I'd learned in college. Within a month, I had 3 regular clients and was making more money than I'd ever made at the coffee shop. Then, out of nowhere, one of my freelance clients offered me a full-time position at their marketing agency. The salary was more than I'd ever dreamed of making, especially right out of college. Everything was falling into place in ways I never could have imagined. About 6 weeks after the hearing, Tyler called me with an idea. "Sarah," he said, "I know this might be weird, but some of your friends from college have been asking about having a graduation party for you. A real one where people actually celebrate your achievements." I had to admit the idea was tempting. My graduation day had been so completely ruined by my parents' text that I'd never gotten to actually celebrate finishing college. "I want to throw you a party," Tyler continued. "I want to invite all your friends, and Aunt Linda, and Mike, and anyone else who's important to you. I want you to have the celebration you deserved." "What about Mom and Dad?" I asked. Tyler was quiet for a moment. "I was thinking I could invite them, but make it clear that this is your day, that they're guests at your celebration, not the other way around." The party ended up being one of the best nights of my life. Tyler had rented out a private room at a nice restaurant. All my college friends were there, plus Mike, plus Aunt Linda, plus some of my new coworkers from the marketing agency. My parents did show up, and it was awkward at first. But something had shifted in the family dynamic. They weren't running the show anymore. They weren't the center of attention. This was my night, and everyone there knew it. My mom tried to make a speech about how proud they were of me, but it felt hollow and performative. But, you know what? Didn't feel hollow? When Tyler stood up and gave a toast. "I want to say something about my sister," he said to the room. "For years, I took Sarah for granted. I thought her success was just automatic, like it didn't require effort or sacrifice. I was wrong about that, and I was wrong about a lot of things." He turned to look at me. "Sarah, you are the strongest, most determined person I know. You achieved everything you have with no help from anyone, and that makes your accomplishments even more impressive. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that, and I'm proud to be your brother." The room erupted in applause, and I found myself crying happy tears for maybe the first time in years. After the party, Tyler drove me home to my new apartment. We sat in his car for a few minutes just talking. "How are things with Mom and Dad?" I asked. Tyler sighed. "They're going to counseling like the judge ordered. I think it's helping, but it's going to take time. They're not used to being held accountable for their actions." "What about you?" I asked. "How are you handling all this?" "Honestly," Tyler said, "it's been hard. I'm learning that a lot of my identity was built on being the favorite kid, and now I have to figure out who I am when I'm not getting special treatment. But I think I'm becoming a better person because of it." As I got out of the car, Tyler called my name. "Sarah," he said, "I know things between us are still complicated, and I know it's going to take time to rebuild trust. But I want you to know that I'm committed to being better. I'm committed to being the brother you deserve. Standing outside my own apartment, holding the keys to my own car, with a job I loved and money in the bank, and a brother who finally saw me as a person, I felt something I'd never felt before. I felt free. That graduation day text broke me. It absolutely shattered my world and forced me to confront years of pain and inequality and abuse that I'd been ignoring. But it also broke the cycle. It broke the pattern of me accepting whatever scraps my family decided I deserved. It broke my habit of making myself small so other people could feel big. Now I'm driving my own story, literally and figuratively. I'm making my own choices, building my own life, and surrounding myself with people who see my worth. And you know what? That's the greatest graduation gift I could have ever given myself. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, drop a comment below and share your experience. And if you want to hear more stories about people who stood up for themselves and changed their lives, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.